Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 1972 horror anthology, Asylum. This is yet another horror anthology from Amicus. They became well known for doing their horror anthologies with low budgets, but with a lot of effectiveness for the most part. And I personally feel that Asylum is their finest hour. This is their best effort. I think this film is a fantastic movie. I think it's a great horror anthology. I personally find it to be, in a lot of ways, pretty underrated because there isn't a lot of people that talk about this one. And I am really looking forward to the special edition Blu-ray from, I believe it might be Severin, but I could be mistaken. But there's a company that's releasing the film on Blu-ray next year, remastered with some features and things like that. And I'm really looking forward to picking that up sometime because I really enjoy this movie. I've seen this film like 3 times, and the most recent time I enjoyed it as much as I did the first 2 times. This is a horror anthology that really does work and really clicks and really pushes all the right buttons. And it's got some absolutely spectacular performances by the cast. Some of the most memorable and effective performances I've seen from a cast in a horror anthology. And it has some of the strongest stories that I've seen in a horror anthology, especially in the Amicus films. There isn't a bad story out of the bunch for me. I think all the stories are great. Some are better than others, but for the most part, they're still really wonderful, entertaining, well-written, well-performed, well-put-together stories for a fairly fast-paced and fun horror anthology. Now, Asylum is directed by Roy Ward Baker, who before this had done films like Quartermass in the Pit and Scars of Dracula, so he'd worked on other horror films before this. I believe this is his first horror anthology, though, and it's hard to tell because it seems like he already knows what he's doing. It seems like he's a veteran of horror anthologies with his first horror anthology. But also, it helps that Roy Ward Baker is a veteran, period. So this wasn't some young guy who was diving into the deep end of the pool and didn't really know what he was doing. He didn't know how to swim. He knew how to swim. He knew how to do these things, and it shows. The direction is, I wouldn't say like it's jaw-dropping or the best direction that I've ever seen or anything like that, but for this movie, it works really well. The script by Robert Bloch is definitely a big, strong suit and one of the finest aspects about this film, and a big reason why this movie works as well as it does. You have a very talented writer who writes the stories for this film, and these are all stories that, for the most part, are not necessarily based on short stories that Robert Bloch wrote. Some of these are actually written specifically for this film, and some of them are inspired in some ways by Robert Bloch's earlier works. But a lot of these are stories that he wrote for the movie, and that's really a great thing. And you can see because when you look at some of the other Amicus horror anthologies, and they're ones that I do enjoy, but you can tell when you have such a talented and absolutely legendary writer in Robert Bloch writing these stories. You have a writer who's multiple steps above some of these other writers that are hired to adapt his work or to come up with their own stories or to adapt other stories from other source material. I thought Robert Bloch did a great job with the black humor and really captured an EC Comics vibe, I felt. And there were moments where it could have been a bit more lighthearted, but this isn't that type of film, though, so it honestly worked whenever they had the little bit of light humor. The film didn't take itself too seriously, which was to its benefit, but it also knew when to take things seriously enough in order to amp up the suspense or to make the film genuinely scary at times. I have heard like the first story, just the imagery that's shown in this story, I thought was absolutely terrifying. So, yeah, the writing is a tour de force. The reason why the characters are so great in this is because of Robert Bloch's screenplay, and the framing story, I liked it as well. It was like this sort of mystery. You're trying to figure out who this doctor is along with the psychiatrist. You don't know, he doesn't know, and you don't really figure it out until the end. And it was actually a pretty good twist. I didn't really see it coming. So that's another strong aspect of this script. It stars Peter Cushing, who is, I believe he's in one of the, yeah, he's definitely one of the segments. He's in, I believe, yeah, he's in the second segment. And you have Barbara Parkins, Sylvia Syms, Richard Todd, Robert Powell, who plays the psychiatrist who's trying to get a job at this asylum. And he's tasked with trying to figure out who this mysterious doctor is, which patient this doctor is. Patrick Magee is in this as Dr. Lionel Rutherford. Rutherford, and you have Jeffrey Belden, who plays Max Reynolds. You also have Charlotte Rampling as Barbara, as well as Britt Ekland, and Herbert Lom is also in this. So everybody is really well cast for their roles, and there isn't a bad performance among the entire bunch. This is a horror anthology that has performances by the cast that really do elevate it and really do raise it to a whole nother level that a lot of other horror anthologies, and even some of the ones that I do enjoy and have fun with, don't really have quite that level of acting. And it's refreshing to see that. It's refreshing to see professional actors really strut their stuff in a horror anthology. It has a pretty solid score by Douglas Gamely. It's nothing spectacular. It's not anything that's going to stay in your head for a long time. I think, just like he did with Tales from the Crypt, some of the music is in the public domain, but it works. It adds to certain sequences. It adds to certain segments. It adds to the atmosphere of the film, the creepy, eerie mood of it all. So it's a score that's effective. The cinematography by Denis and Coop, I thought was also pretty well done. And the editing by Peter Tanner, I really want to point out, because there are times when you watch a horror anthology and it feels like it's not going fast enough, or one story's really slow and lame, and then it kind of kills the whole pace of the movie. This is one of the better paced horror anthologies that I've seen. And I think a large part it's due to the script by Robert Bloch, but also because of the editing. There are a lot of moments in this film where the editing really does help certain sequences move along faster than they would with a editor who is not of the same caliber. And like I said, it was a short film, and it really is. It's 88 minutes. More like 84 or 83, 85 without the end credits. So it's a film that's not even an hour and a half, and it still has some better stories in it than entire movies. So, I mean, that's no small feat. So you have the framing story, which is the one with Dr. Martin, played by Robert Powell. He arrives at this asylum to be interviewed for a job. And the guy who runs the asylum is Dr. Lionel Rutherford, and played by Patrick Magee. And Patrick Magee wants him to show his abilities as a psychiatrist in this unorthodox job interview, where he's like, "Hey, find out who Dr. B Star is. Tell me who you think one of the inmates is, to tell me who you think Dr. B Star is, because there's all these different inmates." And that's the framing story. Dr. Martin comes in and he interviews these inmates, and they tell their story. and tell how they got into the asylum. The first segment is Frozen Fear. It stars Barbara Parkins as Bonnie, Sylvia Syms as Ruth, and Richard Todd as Walter. So Dr. Martin goes in and interviews Bonnie, played by Barbara I believe. I don't know if it interviews Bonnie or not. Yeah, interviews Bonnie. So he interviews Bonnie, and she tells him about this story of how she had this plot to murder Ruth, who had a wealthy life that she wanted, but a wealthy wife of her lover Walter, played by Richard Todd. But what she didn't know is that Ruth is someone who studies voodoo, so she's into voodoo and black magic, and this results in a very memorable sequence of gruesome events. Bonnie kills Ruth and cuts her up into pieces, or has Walter do that and put her in a freezer in the basement. Well, because she studies voodoo, she found a way, because of this like necklace that she wears all the time, it somehow enables her body parts to be able to still move around. So you have these iconic, absolutely blood-curdling, and I'm having a hard time even saying curdling and talking about this, because it gives me it gives me chills just thinking about this particular sequence. So you have multiple different moments in the scene where the severed body parts of Ruth, who are wrapped up in butcher paper, start moving around by themselves. And I thought the effects that they did for this were quite impressive for the low budget and for the time. So yeah, there's a lot of, the one that really stuck with me is there's a shot that shows the severed head of Ruth, and it turns around and looks straight at Bonnie, and you can see that it's breathing, so you can hear the breath going in and out through the butcher paper, and you see it all, and it's an effective sequence, and it was a great way to start the anthology. The second segment is called The Weird Tailor, and this one has Barry Morse as Bruno, and Bruno is this tailor who is interviewed by Dr. Martin, and he tells him about what led him to being in this asylum. And he was a poor tailor, and he was facing eviction. He was going to lose his business and lose his home because they're one and the same, until one night he gets a visit from this mysterious man named Mr. Smith, played by Peter Cushing, and he wants him to produce some elaborate, crazy suit from this very weird, strange, surreal, glowing fabric. And he says, you need to do this, but you can only sew this suit after midnight. So Bruno does this, he makes the suit, but eventually he realizes and figures out the truth behind what it will be used for, and he's not a fan of that at all. The suit will be used to reanimate Mr. Smith's dead son, and Mr. Smith also has no money to pay the tailor, which is a double bummer. Like, he doesn't really want to be dabbling in black magic and bringing some dead guy to life, but he also doesn't want to not get any money for it. So he gets in a fight with Mr. Smith, he accidentally kills him, and he returns the suit. But his wife uses the suit to put it on their mannequin, and then that's when he realizes what the true powers are. Like, he didn't realize it before, he just realized that there's something wrong here, and he's not getting his money, so he got in a fight with Mr. Smith, and then the mannequin comes to life and attacks Bruno. And once again, for the budget and for the time, it was a pretty decent effect with the mannequin coming to life. I also really liked the look of the fabric. I thought they did a really fine job making the fabric look so surreal and mysterious, and just look like something out of this world. The third segment is called Lucy Comes to Stay. This one is one of my favorites. I enjoy the weird tailor. It's fun. It's got some good performances by Barry Morse and Peter Cushing. Frozen Fear, I would probably say, is my favorite out of the segments in the film. But I don't know. Maybe I might give it to Lucy Comes to Stay, because Lucy Comes to Stay has some really standout and excellent performances by the cast, especially Charlotte Rampling and Britt Ekland. So Dr. Martin comes in and interviews Barbara, and she tells her story, how she ended up in the asylum, and she tells him that she's been in there before, and she tells a story about what happened after she was released, before her most recent stint in the asylum. And she was released. She's very closely guarded and monitored by her brother George, played by James Villiers. And there's also a nurse there, Miss Higgins, played by Megs Jenkins. And she's definitely not happy about that. And she ends up getting some relief when she ends up meeting up with her best friend Lucy, played by Britt Ekland. And Britt Ekland is absolutely drop-dead gorgeous in this, and so is Charlotte Rampling. And you find out that Lucy is this kind of split personality of Barbara. And I thought the film did a really good job showcasing these split personalities and not making it obvious from the start, and actually showing showing Lucy in the flesh. There was a really clever way of showing a split personality, and it was a different actress as well. It wasn't the same actress playing a different character. That was a nice change of pace, because most of the time when you have like split personality stories, it's just the same actor playing, or actress playing, a different character, which makes sense. But this one is completely different, and that makes it stand out. And I really love watching Charlotte Rampling and Britt Ekland play off each other. The fourth one is called Mannequins of Horror. This is a pretty short one. Dr. Martin interviews Dr. Byron, played by Herbert Lom. He's upset at Rutherford, who runs the asylum. He then tells Dr. Martin of his plans to transfer his soul into these small little automatons that he's created that look like these, those little toy robots, but like he chopped off the head of the robot and put his head on top of it. And there's other models as well with other heads. And he explains to Dr. Martin that he wants to will this mannequin to life, and he'll be able to do it. He says that the interior of the robot is organic because it's a miniaturized version of his own insides. And Martin concludes in his interview, and Max shows him downstairs to deliver his judgment to Rutherford. So this is from Wikipedia, but really that's kind of confusing. What happens is Dr. Martin stops talking to him, and then Dr. Byron ends up taking over. His spirit transfers into this automaton, and it walks around, and it also looks kind of cute, really. It doesn't look that scary. And it walks around, and it ends up killing. He brings his mannequin to life. It makes it all the way to Dr. Rutherford's office, and it kills him with a scalpel. Dr. Martin ends up destroying the mannequin, which kills Dr. Byron, and he stomps on it, and little tiny guts and blood come out of it. And then you have like the twist. The twist comes out, and it's I kind of don't want to give away the twist of what Dr. Starr's true identity is, so I'm not going to. Check out the film for yourself if you want to see who Dr. Starr is. And this was a pretty fun time. That's Asylum. I really don't. That's it. You had the stories, and then you had the intro segment, and then you had the wraparound. And I want to mention the music for the film. Like I said, majority of the score is drawn from public domain pieces. by Modest Musogorski. One in particular is Night on Bald Mountain, which is used in the opening and closing credits, which is a nice choice. I remember Night on Bald Mountain from Fantasia. I used to watch that quite a bit on VHS, and I haven't seen that in a long time. Now, Asylum was originally released on DVD by Dark Sky Films in 2006, but it's out of print, and it can go for a decent amount of money, even used. I got a funny story about that I want to share before I bid you all adieu. I thought I got this one because there was a guy in a Facebook group who was selling a lot of titles for cheap and for lower prices. And I thought I got Asylum, and I paid for it. But I got the package in the mail, and the package was open, and Asylum wasn't in it. But it did have 3 other movies in it that I asked for. One of them was The Boojans, another one was the out-of-print Lionsgate release of Martin, and another one was Fantastic Planet. But it was missing Asylum, and it was missing Company of the Wolves. And I then contacted the seller, and he's like, yeah, a couple other people who purchased things from me also had stuff missing. And apparently the post office, there's somebody working in the post office that is at this guy's post office somewhere, and he's just stealing shit, which is pretty fucked up. But you know, it's first world problem, but it still sucks. And I should have Asylum in my hands right now, showing it to you on camera, but I don't have it because some asshole postal worker stole it. But anyway, the Blu-ray is coming out soon, so it works out. It works out in the end. Yeah, I'm just double checking what the company is that's releasing Asylum, so I'm not like not giving, credit where credit is due, and just double checking, because I know there are fans of this film, and they might not know that it is getting a Blu-ray release. So I believe it is Severin. It's Severin. So I was correct. Just wanted to double check. But anyway, I might as well take a look at the features. Let you know about the features for the release. So it's coming out and also give you the release date. Oh, actually, it's coming out this year. I did not know. I was wrong about 2018. Well, it kind of is. It's coming out in December. It's coming out on the 5th of this year. It's an item is a pre-order, will not be available until December 5th. Well, actually, I don't think it's coming out this year. The pre-order is coming out on December 5th. So I don't believe it comes out on December 5th. I believe it comes out later. I think it's like early January or something like that. So it has reversible cover art. So you have the cover art that just I don't really care for, this white poster with hands scratching on the wall, and then you have the original poster art, which I'm glad that it enables people to be able to flip it around. This is also going to be in a 3-pack with 2 other Amicus films. Sadly, they're not horror anthologies. This is the only Amicus horror anthology that's in this pack. So that's probably the reason why there'll never be like an Amicus horror anthology box set, because the rights are all owned by different people. But anyway, these are the special features for this set. You have on-set report from BBC called Two's a Company from 1972. You have a featurette with an interview with David J. Shaw talking about Robert Bloch. Fiona I can't say this fucking name. Fiona Subotovsky remembers Milton Subotovsky. And Inside the Fear Factory featurette with directors Roy Ward Baker, Freddie Francis, and producer Max J. Rosenberg, as well as a commentary with director Roy Ward Baker and camera operator Neil Binney, and a theatrical trailer. And I believe it is also remastered. So yeah, Looking at the screenshots, the film looks fantastic, the best it's ever looked. So if you are a fan of the film, or if you're one of those that blind buys stuff, I definitely do recommend this one, especially if you're a fan of horror anthologies, and definitely if you're a fan of the Amicus horror anthologies, if you've seen a handful of them but haven't gotten around to seeing Asylum. Anyway, I don't know what else to say, except, yeah, thanks for watching my review, and definitely give this remarkable horror anthology a watch sometime. I definitely do feel that it is something that will be worth your time, and hopefully you will appreciate it. You might not like it as much as I do, but I definitely do feel that it's a film that has a lot of merits and that I think anybody can appreciate. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys later. See ya.